Hello, I'm Anthony C. Ferrante, and over the next hour or so, we're going to be looking behind the scenes with the filmmakers and actors of Deep Blue Sea 3, the latest entry in the ongoing franchise from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. Deep Blue Sea 3 comes ashore on digital on July 28th and a Blu-ray combo pack and DVD on August 25th, 2020. And it comes complete with the full-length film and some fascinating bonus features. So, welcome to San Diego Comic-Con Virtual Edition 2020, and here are our panelists. Best known as the writer and director of The Skull, screenwriter for the films like U.S. Marshals, The Fast and the Furious, and Rollerball, and as a director and co-writer of The Quiet Ones, I'd like to introduce the director of Deep Blue Sea 3, John Pogue. Hi, John.
Hey, how you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing good. Welcome. Next up, his career boasts over 30 writing credits on films and TV series, most notably the science fiction favorite Outlander and the third installment of the Underworld series, Rise of the Lycans. Meet our screenwriter, Dirk Blackman.
Hello. Hello, Anthony.
Next up, he played series regular Wolf Taylor in TNT's The Last Ship, played roles in Force of Execution and Maximum Conviction, a 9-time world champion in 6 different martial arts disciplines, some of which are on display in the film. Meet our film's very aggressive Lucas, Bren Foster.
Hello, Anthony.
How you doing? Next up is an actress of note in her home country of Japan. She continues expanding into Western cinema as a young but hyper-intelligent and capable Mia. Welcome, Reina Aoi.
Hi,
Reina?
Anthony.
Next up is Emerson Brooks. His resume boasts a lengthy list of credits, including some of the highest-grossing video game franchises in history, Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto, and an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actor in a Daytime Drama for his critically acclaimed performance in All My Children. You probably best know him for his series regular role on TNT's long-running series, The Last Ship, and now in Deep Blue Sea 3. Welcome our actor who plays Shaw, Emerson Brooks. Hi, Emerson.
Anthony. How you doing?
How you doing?
Good.
An Australian-born actor recognized for his role as Cull in The Vampire Diaries and its spin-off The Originals, as well as his role as Andrew Garfield's brother in the Academy Award-nominated film Hacksaw Ridge. And in Deep Blue Sea 3, he takes on the possible friend, possible foe role of Richard Lowell. Meet Nathaniel Buzolic.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey. And then finally, last but not least, you know her from her earlier beginnings as Cynthia Saunders on Malcolm in the Middle, and in the game-changing role of Alex Rousseau on ABC's blockbuster series Lost, and as Billy Bob Thornton's partner in solving crimes, Brittany Gold, in the current Amazon hit series Goliath. Welcome, our lead actress in the role of Emma Collins, Tania Raymonde.
Hi.
Hey,
Hello.
how you doing?
Good. Hi. Hi, guys. That was loud. Sorry. I'm turning into my mother, where anytime I have any kind of communication that's not face-to-face, it gets very loud.
It must be interesting kind of reuniting in the Zoom world as opposed to being physically in a gigantic auditorium with everybody.
Right.
I miss you guys.
Well, let's get started on this. I just wanted to talk to John and Dirk briefly to kind of talk about the evolution of Deep Blue Sea, give us a little bit of a synopsis of what people are going to expect as coming off the first 2 popular films in the franchise.
So got a call from a friend of mine, Brad Love, who's executive in charge of Deep Blue Sea 3. And he said they want to do a sequel, but let's not do another, underwater lab kind of thing because, well, they did it twice. So let's do something new. So he said, can you come up with a new story, a new environment? And I just pitched him a great idea. And he said, not so much. So I pitched him another great idea. And he said, not so much. So, all right, fine. And so I went out and I thought, all right, let's do a little research. What cool thing could I find out in the ocean that I haven't really seen sharks inhabit yet? And I found this town, well, it's not a town, it's a fishing village called Santa Cruz del Islote off the coast of Colombia. And it's a fishing village. It's like 400 by 700 feet wide, 500 people. I thought, boom, that's it. People are going to be on this little island, sharks there. And then I said, oh, no, that's not good because they just can stay on land. That's not very threatening. So I thought, let's sink it. I just thought, let's sink the town because we could do all sorts of neat things underneath the town. It's threatening. The water is really high. And he bought off on that. He thought that sounded really good because amongst other things, we could bring in global warming. We can make it a little topical. And so there we had it. We had a location, then some characters, some great set pieces, et cetera, and we're off to the races.
I was super intrigued by sort of the concept that you presented. And, I tried to look from concept to character. And for me, Tania's character, Dr. Emma Collins, was at a critical point in her life where she was fighting a losing battle. The question the movie asks, and hopefully sort of a non-preachy way, sort of a subconscious way, is how do you fight a losing battle? And that was the journey that we kind of pull her through in the movie. And so with the concept that Dirk presented and all the visual possibilities and where this could go from a character perspective and how the characters around her could sort of help ripple with that theme, I was super intrigued and we sort of got to begin a great adventure.
With that, let's take a look at the opening scene of the film and see how our character of Emma literally sets a stage for Deep Blue Sea 3.
Hey, all you Shark Week fans out there. Welcome back. It's our third summer here at Little Happy, an abandoned fishing village in the Mozambique Channel. The residents were some of the first victims of rising sea levels. 800 people used to live on this tiny man-made island. Now there are only 2 left. And in case you were thinking this is someone else's life, this is what the Florida Keys will look like. And Houston. And New Orleans. But there's another side to Little Happy. The nursery. Out there. All right. You want to see?
John and Dirk, one of the great things about horror and science fiction films is that the best ones can kind of take an environmental message and then seep it into the movie and kind of make it sort of dressing, but you still can enjoy it as a horror movie or an action movie like this is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Tonally, to your question, Anthony, we were really trying to follow deliberately in the footsteps of the original 1999 film. And that movie really walked the line that you're talking about, I think, in a different way, because global, warming was more sort of, an issue that was, more under the surface. But we tried to undercut being too earnest and precious with our messages with a lot of humor. And we were hoping that humor would sort of dovetail with some of the humor from the original and sort of in the same kind of category, where when the movie starts to get a little too serious, too preachy, too earnest, we sort of cut back, we cut back on it and make you realize, we're not trying to be too serious here.
Just one little quick thing, an aside for Dirk. I'm assuming Robert Shaw from Jaws. Was that a little in-joke on your part?
Well, maybe just a tiny bit.
Busted.
Actually, there's that Robert Shaw, and also there's a I'll just say there's a nice fight in the movie that was inspired by a fight in The Deep, Peter Benchley novel that was adapted. So yeah, that fight from that movie, I thought, I'd like to see that in this, because I don't expect to see a fight necessarily in a shark movie. So we got a fight, and that was really, really fun. It's a good fight too.
Dirk, I've got a question for you. What was the idea that you actually gave first for Deep Blue Sea 3? The one that got rejected, the first bad one.
Now, here's the thing. I might be writing that, so I don't know. Well, it involved a tanker that was taken over by pirates, and it sank, but with people on board. It sank just off an island with people on board. So there was a whole bunch of people. The heroine had to fight the pirates with all the stuff that was actually in the tanker, while sharks were chasing them throughout the sunken ship. And there was a storm, and there was weapons, because the pirates, they actually took the ship because there was a hidden there's a hidden cache of arms on the tanker. So then I was thinking, okay, machine guns, sharks, underwater, boom. Who wouldn't want to see this?
So it's like Pirates of the Caribbean meets that movie that Mark Wahlberg did on that oil tanker.
Beats Captain Phillips.
Meets Captain Phillips.
That's pretty much exactly how I pitched it.
Before we do the next clip, I wanted to ask one more question for John about the sets. So we talked a little bit about the location, but did you actually build other sets for some of the water stuff, or is everything pretty much out there? Predominantly, you're shooting on location.
Dirk wrote this amazing script, and then as you know, as a director, it's then, so how are we going to do this? There were so many things going on, that were kind of huge, 4 major underwater action sequences. It's kind of gigantic. We figured out a way to be 360 with our water set, so that we could have all of the sets kind of be gathered around this cove, as you'll see. And most of the rest of everything else was made up digitally. And that way we could always be shooting 360. We didn't have any moves. Every day you just walk out the door and you go to this set, which was on this giant lagoon outdoor stage, shoot everything there and walk home. And so we tried to be kind of efficient in that way. We were very fortunate. Frans Lewis in South Africa, our production designer, Michael Swan, the DP, Hunt and Patty, our great producers, the studio, Film Africa, everybody, really gave it their all and collaborated to try to figure out how we could actually pull this off, and not break the bank. And so it was, there was a lot of planning, but it was basically one spot for everything. We did use a real reef. We were out in nature with real sharks, and as you'll see, the boat that we're on is a real boat. We didn't fabricate the boat, so we were actually on that boat as well.
Let's check out another clip right now. This time showing that there's just might be some problems with the sharks.
Emma.
No, back off, Shaw. Just stop. I want you to meet Sally. She's the great white who led us to this nursery after we tagged her. We've been studying how she and her neighbors are adapting to climate change in real time.
Are you out of your mind?
If you stay calm and redirect. Sally's just reminding me who I am. And who she is. Don't try this at home.
That scene was kind of interesting, I thought, because a piece of that came directly out of research that one of the producers did, where she found that great whites can bump other fish in the ocean and just kind of like warn them off. So that was one of those things where we said, oh, we've got to use that. And that's what you did there in that scene. I thought it came out really, really, really nicely.
I want to talk about everybody's experience working on the show. The big thing, obviously, we've all heard horror stories about filming on water. I mean, Steven Spielberg on Jaws. It was, you hear it. It just was this ongoing thing. Waterworld, Titanic, The Abyss, and obviously things have gotten easier because you can augment things with digital effects and stuff, and makes it a little easier. So I want to talk to you guys about that. How did you kind of deal with a lot of this water work? And there's a lot of it in this movie.
I'll go first, and then I'll let these guys tell the truth. The most important thing to me as the director on this movie was that everybody was safe, frankly. And as you know, there are so many additional safety issues with shooting around water, from what can happen with electricity to people falling in. So safety was paramount. We were very fortunate in that we had this incredible South African team called the Frog Squad that do underwater projects all over the world. and they're essentially South African SEALs that also make movies. And so they took very, very good care of us from a safety perspective, but also from a filmmaking perspective, and did just a stellar job of helping us pull it off. Who wants to say what it was really like?
I mean, I can just help y'all lead off with this. The fact that I think half the movie is shot underwater and none of the cast knew how to scuba dive 5 days before we started.
Whoa. Nathaniel and I have done scuba diving before.
I remember Bren being pretty professional day one.
We all had to go off the coast of California, and I guess maybe some did in Africa, where we actually had to get certified to be able to scuba dive for this movie.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the first conversation that I had with John when we were in casting, he looked at me kind of like with a really serious look on his face, and he said, "Listen, I just want you to understand, like this is going to be quite a lot. Like this is like a no holds barred, very, very physical endeavor. Like, do you understand what you're getting into?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, you're kidding me. I know how to scuba dive. I know how to swim." I'm like, "I'm fine, no problem. Please." But he was right. But I think all of that, all the training that we did, all the real life underwater experience we had to go through, though it was very cold because it was actually winter in South Africa when we were shooting.
Oh, okay.
Even though it looks, I'm sure, very tropical and beautiful and warm, it was quite cold. That added really to the, it really put you in it, certainly. Like there's no way to not awaken yourself in the scene if you've just jumped into an ice cold water tank and had to get out. So we were always wet. This entire film, just wet, half wet, soaking wet, in a wetsuit, out of a wetsuit, in a bathing suit, all the time. And we just had to get used to it.
That's true for not only the underwater sequences, but later in the film, things happen to the rest of the village where water becomes heavily involved. I don't know, Reina, if you still remember being in flooded buildings, but are you still traumatized?
I thought that the water is gonna be a very high, but it was it was lower than I expected, so I think it's fine now.
And just talking to the actors and also John a little bit too, trying to capture the suspense beats and all of that with the sharks and with all the other elements when you're going to be putting the sharks in digitally, but there's that weirdness about how to be able to get your cameras and everything in place. There's all those unknown factors, the waves, the water. Did that affect how you shot things? And did you kind of have to go with the flow, or did you just kind of have to keep doing it until you got what you really needed?
I think it was a combination of both. I think about 30% of the time it went as planned. So many things would break. The communication underwater is super challenging. You're basically talking to 20 people with a giant underwater megaphone that no one can really understand. So it was mostly about the fact that this is a really great cast that really cared and were true professionals, and they were very prepared. It definitely influenced the tone of the movie, and that there's a more realistic as opposed to controlled, stylized feel to the movie, where we're trying to sort of use those happy accidents that happen as a result of this chaos. So what do you think, guys?
I enjoyed being underwater, actually. And I wish Dirk had written more underwater stuff. It was fun.
I tried.
I bet they said no to that too, Dirk. Don't worry. We'll talk to them later. But yeah, it was fun. I think one day I in between takes, I would just stay underwater, and I was having handstand competitions with the Frog Squad. So it was actually something that I really, really enjoyed, and I wish there was more of it. But I guess the weirdest thing was, like John says, he was communicating to us by this speaker underwater. So all we would really hear, and you'd have to sort of stop your breathing because you couldn't really hear as you were breathing. So you would kind of stop your breathing for a second, and all you'd hear is, you're like, okay, I'll go again. I'll do it again. But, to John's credit, he is such a great director, and he made everybody on the set feel so comfortable and so safe and so open to explore their characters. So I think once we got to the underwater stuff, we were just and we had to trust, because we couldn't see what they were really shooting or what they were actually getting. And I think after we all saw the movie, I was really pleasantly surprised at how they sort of all put it together, because when you're kind of underwater and you're just shooting bits and pieces, you could kind of go, oh, is this even going to work? Or is this just going to look like a confused mess? But, to John's credit and to all the team, they really pieced together the really difficult task of going underwater and then matching it all up with what all the actors were doing.
When we watched the film, me and my family, the opening scenes, they just look beautiful. You see all the underwater world, traveling past you through the lens of the camera. So I was really pleasantly surprised. But I do have to say, personally, that was beautiful. And I know you loved it underwater, Nate. But to me, the stuff that was above the water was the pinnacle for me, because I found that, I felt that we hit some high moments of dramatic tension and stuff that really kind of pushed the story forward. But I guess they both bounce off each other, don't they? Or that underwater, the calmness underwater, the beauty of it underwater, and then you kind of bring it above the water and all hell breaks loose. I don't know, they all kind of bounced off each other to really come through and make a really enjoyable film for me. And when you have a director who cares and makes you feel comfortable, I think that contributed to us as doing as well as we did. I kind of knew during the film that, from what each and every one of us brought, that it was going to come out pretty special. So I'm really happy with it, guys.
I will say, though, in terms of the shooting underwater, again, which was so interesting, and this was a crazy phenomenon that I guess no actor will ever know unless they do exactly this kind of movie. So like Nate said, there was this underwater megaphone that looked like something from the Victorian era, which was like a box with a string on it, kind of like when you used to talk to your friend with a can and a string. And that was threaded all the way down into the water. And, once you suit up and you've got your regulator and they make sure you've got air in your tank and you check all your levels and you've got everything on and you go under, it's kind of a pain to get back up to the surface, take everything off, go get notes from John, come back in. So once we were in the tank and underwater, we were pretty much underwater and stuck, and that was it. So those were kind of like just the logistical challenges of shooting a movie like this. Not only can you not get quick notes, but once you're down, you're down. And when you're under there, you don't hear anything because your regulator is so loud. Every time you take a breath in, there are bubbles everywhere. You can't hear anything. And so what happened was it developed a really interesting communion between us as the actors and the Frog Squad underwater camera guys, because we had to really rely on them to sort of be like our eyes and ears on what the hell was going on, while we were trying to shoot these elaborate underwater fight sequences and get notes and all sorts of things. And so I noticed that all we were using were hand signals. And I remember staring at these Frog Squad camera guys, trying to decipher what was going up above water and trying to figure out, okay, is that what he meant? And him saying, just try it again, or him moving my body and saying, we're going to do it this way. And he was even kind of improvising on the spot in the same time that I was. So it was really interesting in this peaceful, quiet underwater thing of working these scenes like Play-Doh with no words, no language, nothing. So that was a wild part of it.
Like Play-Doh.
The makeup girls had a hard time underwater too. I mean, trying to apply, foundation underwater, Anthony, it's not easy. And that's why it never happened.
It sounds like you guys did a lot of this stuff. Did you have stunt performers at all, or do you guys just go fine, balls in?
Balls in.
There were stunt performers, but I mean, no stunt performer wants to get in the ring with Bren Foster over here. So
wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it if you paid me. And they tried. I said, no, not doing it. Get the other guy.
They helped keep me in shape training during the film. We were at the gym a lot together and working on some boxing and weights. So
let me tell you a story about Bren Foster in a South African gym. And let's say just a heavy boxing bag picked a fight with the wrong person, and Bren took the whole bag off its hinges, probably scared every single person in the gym. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost a lot of memberships that day. Yeah, he's a dangerous man. You don't feel scared when you walk around with Bren Foster, I don't care if there's 35 guys. I'm backing Bren. You know?
it was an old carabiner. It was
blame the age,
my
Brent.
excuse
Blame
anyway.
the age. It was the force of the kick, I would say. But anyway, yeah. But it was
But
good.
our stunt guy, our stunt coordinator, Vernon, was one of the coolest men I've ever met. Somewhat of a shaman himself. Was also like alongside all the great people working on this, was very, very keen on like making us comfortable and understanding like this is what a fight scene is going to feel like underwater, and these are the challenges, and move fast but slow, and all this crazy like Tai Chi Genghis Khan type stuff that I don't even remember anymore. But he was wonderful and really in it. It seemed like every department was cognizant of how challenging it was going to be to make this kind of movie, and really wanted to make it like the most epic it could possibly be, you know?
Well, and I have to say you guys are being a little modest because you may not remember, but during the casting process, one of the things that we talked about was, again, given the resources that we've got, is that you're going to have to do your own diving and your own stunts, up until a point. This is not going to be one of those movies where we just sort of stop everything and bring in your double. So, you guys were all game from the beginning, and then many of the additional characters that we cast, we were fortunate to also find stunt people that were also, I think, very good actors. And so we rounded out the cast with a lot of professional stunt people. But in many of the key sequences, it was very important that we see your faces, we see you experiencing what's happening in the action. And I don't want to give anything away, but in the climactic moments, you guys were you did your own stunts in the most important sequences. So I was really lucky that you guys were willing to do that and put the time and effort into it to make it safe, and I think make it look good.
It's time to take a look at the bulk of the cast in action. Here's a moment that sets up the adversarial factions in the film, and a first reference to the initial problem at Little Happy.
Guys, this is Richard and Lucas. This is Spin. He's our MIT tech wizard. Shaw, you remember Shaw?
Good to see you, Shaw.
Good to see you too, Richie.
It's Richard. We're Dr. Lowell now. Your call, Eugene.
And this is Mia. She's one of our summer students on loan from the Toba Institute of Maritime Technology. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Domo. Hajimemashite.
Very nice to meet you, Mia.
Nice to meet you.
These boys need a little help from our Triton.
What are you looking to find?
3 bulls.
It's a bad neighborhood for bulls. It'd be like sushi to the whites.
Lucas?
Usually that would be the case. We got a tracker in one. We're sure they were headed this way. A half-dozen people went missing about 100 miles up the Orange River. At first, the locals thought it was crocs. Turns out it was bull sharks.
What? But sharks don't exhibit that kind of behavior unless they're stressed or hungry. You know that.
Exactly. We were hired to stop them and to find out what's wrong.
Wait, so they kill people on a river?
Bull shark can survive in the freshwater.
Yeah, I picked right up on that.
They work together. Or they hunted in a pack.
That's not possible.
Together like dolphins?
That's right. Seen it myself.
I find this really hard to believe. Okay. Mia? You got anything on the Triton?
Yeah. So, it's been at least a week since I've seen any Cockarainus Lucas. A few dozen great whites.
No bulls.
Nope.
There you have it. I guess that's goodbye and good luck.
Tania, I have a question for you.
Yes.
There are things in this movie that I'm going. It's such a great character,
yes.
and you really get to channel that inner Sigourney Weaver, Ripley, Aliens kind of thing at times, and then some. Even a little Linda Hamilton too. Was it kind of fun playing such a kick-ass heroine that through the course of the movie she just kind of gets in there and takes charge?
Yeah, it was. It was, sorry, this is silly. It was wonderful because I think that another great thing that John and I talked about initially was her transformation, that she didn't really begin as this like ass-kicking superhero, but in fact was a scientist that cared about what she did, and yet had this like, was so motivated by her work that she could somehow gather the strength to turn into somewhat of like a superhero, so to speak, in the Linda Hamilton vein. Did you ask me if I enjoyed it?
Oh, you had to have fun being able
Oh,
to
I
do
had
that.
so much fun. I was like a dream come true. I felt like I was like an action figure or something. I absolutely loved it. I also miss wearing goggles. I realized just now that putting them back on, I feel like I'm back in South Africa, you know?
Tanya was one of the hardest workers I've ever worked with too. She did such an incredible job over like, you know, the shooting period in South Africa. I've never known a number one to be so humble, so kind. Not to say that now all the other number ones who I've worked with are like, well, what is that supposed to mean? But Tanya was all time. She was literally one of those people who came to work, gave 100%. She was always like willing and able to play with the scene, work with, you know, who she was working. But she was like, I mean, dedication was like 1,000%. But what I'll say was interesting is when I was doing a chemistry read for the role, because Tanya had already got the job, she was actually a little bit late. Not going to. Anyway, but get this. So you know, I'm chatting to John. We're actually chatting over Skype, and Tanya comes in with wet hair, and I think this girl's method. She's jumped in a swimming pool to make this scene more authentic. Now, I later found out she just woke up late, had a shower, and she didn't have time to dry her hair. But the point is, she looks like she's very dedicated, even when she auditions. And I thought that was incredible. I thought, I'm not going to get this job because I didn't come with wet hair, and it's a movie about sharks. We're supposed to be scuba divers. I messed up. I've lost the job based on that, but no wonder she got it.
There was never a moment that you had any doubt that Tania was 100% committed to making the best movie possible. I'm talking about above and beyond. And when you're working next to that, it inspires you and makes everything you're doing better. But I agree with you, Nate. I've never worked with the number one that was so completely invested the way she was, willing to absolutely give it all, like lay down her life for this film. It felt like in the end. So it was pretty inspiring. It's pretty inspiring.
But Emerson, you and Tania actually have a great character development between the two of you. This sort of camaraderie, and it really comes across on screen. How did you have a little bit of time to kind of prep with her before you started, or were you guys just thrown into the wild with it? Because you guys, it's really fun and it's really well written. I love the dynamic between those two characters.
Well, I mean, I guess from my perspective, I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of time before we started shooting, but I guess we used the time we did have pretty well. We just got along. I mean, she's an easy person to get along with. She's super sweet and super smart and amazingly talented. So it's not, if you can't get along with Tania, it's probably you, not her. So we just got along great from the beginning, and we're able to focus on the things we need to focus on to try to, you know, create some chemistry. So once we started shooting, you know, 7 days after we were cast in the film, that we could make it seem authentic, you know, make it seem like we actually have a relationship. I played a sort of a big brother / father figure. I was good friends with her character's dad, who has died, and was kind of hanging around while she was doing the research at Little Happy, while our character was doing the research at Little Happy, to keep an eye on her, make sure she stayed out of trouble and stayed safe.
We were all staying at the same hotel.
Yes.
And so what was really nice was that we had time to be amongst one another when we weren't just working all the time. I mean, we were such freaks that we would go to the Virgin Gym and swim.
Yes.
After like 12 hours of swimming.
We worked all day long. We'd be underwater, and we'd be like,
yeah. And then we'd go
back in the water.
Remember? I remember that.
Absolutely. It was a good time. Everybody got along. It was really great. It wasn't, you know, at the end of the day, we enjoyed meeting back up after being on set for 12 hours and all the stuff that's involved with that. So I think that shows in the film. And I think that's also a testament to casting and John and the producers on how they decided who they wanted to be in this movie.
Tania also has a French mother who was in South Africa with us and probably explored more of the country than we did. She just go out by herself. We're getting all these warnings like, don't go out by yourself. It could be dangerous. And, Tania's mum, little, French woman just walking around, explored the world. It was incredible.
Will you stop blowing my cover that my mother was there? I see
time.
little girl.
She wasn't allowed.
I can take the mother to set.
So Nate, being the fourth Hemsworth, was there discussion about how scruffy your face needed to be so you didn't kind of have any issues with your brothers?
John and I sat down and we got Chris on a Skype call and we said, Chris, look, you've got some big movies coming out. No one cares. We don't care because you've not done a shark movie, which just goes to show that you just haven't got the chops. You might have worked on Home and Away, but you haven't done a shark movie. So we spoke to Chris. Liam, obviously no shark movie. And what's his other brother's name?
Hey, Luke, that's my mate.
Luke, hey, Lukey. Lukey, I apologize. Luke, it's not your fault. They always forget me too. Don't worry, Luke. So no, I think, there was, I don't know if was there ever talk that I was even going to be possibly Australian? Bren sort of took the Australian accent and ran with it. It's authentic. It's so good. You should hear him. I mean,
I'm really American. I just put the Australian accent on.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But I think there might have been a discussion about maybe my character being Australian, but I wanted to be American.
Reina, I also have a question for you. Your acting career has been primarily Japanese films and television. Your English is really great in the film. How did you prepare for a role like this? I mean, she's really fascinating and interesting, and you get all these great quippy lines. Was some of that ad-lib? Did that come organically, or was it scripted? Let's talk a little about you and your process.
Acting in English was kind of challenging for me because I've done before in Chinese, but English one was my first time acting. So I read all I did repeat the line 100 times in front of native speakers, and listen to the audio, and every day on the train while I'm sleeping or something like that. But it's very strange that, when you are in front of the camera or you have to do with acting, you have to say the line with acting. And it's sometimes I couldn't do it correctly. Even I practiced it so many times. So I was kind of frustrated, but, everyone was, my interpreter, and John and the cast all crew were next to me all the time. So they helped me a lot. So it was very helpful because sometimes I have to do ad-lib. So I'm not good at the ad-lib. So it was kind of challenging too. But I really enjoyed it.
You did a great job, Reina. You really did a great job. You were amazing. When I watched the film, I thought you were fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really fantastic.
And I remember that Nate had a Japanese line, right? So I saw
Domo hajimemashite.
Yeah, you remember that.
I had to do one line, Anthony, in Japanese, and I think we had to get 7 different interpreters. We had to get a team of people. We were on, So to Reina's credit, she was speaking the whole movie in English. I had one line in Japanese, and I was like, I don't want to mess it up.
Bren, getting to play a character that is kind of sketchy at times. Was it fun to try to find that balance? Because it's always a balance with a role like that of how far do you go or how far do you not go.
Put it this way: he's really, really loyal to his employer, Genetics Labs, and in his mind, he's doing everything he does is for the greater good. But there's no price that's too high for him to pay. I think the freedom that was afforded me through John was a great opportunity to explore this guy. And even though looking at the script, there were some things that were kind of born on set and with discussions from John. And I think we got some amazing stuff that wasn't originally there. And some of the stuff with Emerson, my man, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to spoil the film. But some of that stuff was pretty amazing. And just towards the end, some of the stuff that kind of came out of Lucas, I don't think we could have planned that. I think that just kind of just came about as the film progressed and took a life of its own. So I'm just happy with the way it turned out.
All right, well, let's see another clip and see how this camaraderie plays out on screen. In this one, it's where we realize there might be a problem that's a little different than initially thought.
I should get back to my team.
Those great whites down there, your bulls did that too?
Yeah.
Those sharks aren't acting like sharks, Richard.
They prey on great white nurseries as a reliable food supply.
Why didn't you tell us that to begin with, man?
Great whites are faster and stronger. They eat bull sharks for lunch.
Not these. My theory is that they're adapting to climate change faster than the whites, which is making them highly aggressive towards everything. I was hired to perform a neurological evaluation.
So Genetics can make money off them?
Oh, you know, Emma, I just lost a man down there.
So what do we do?
We don't get those sharks out of the water now, they'll destroy everything we're working to save.
I guess the thing we should really be talking about now, with a drum roll, let's talk sharks. Something that I know a lot about.
My Oscar nomination. Sorry.
And your Oscar nomination, but we'll get to that after we talk about sharks.
Sharks.
So I want to address this to everyone, whoever wants to chime in. Obviously, I'm assuming there was a few practical elements, maybe a fin here or something, but predominantly digital sharks. Can you talk a little bit about that and acting off of nothing and then acting off of pieces and trying to kind of build up as actors to those moments when you know that thing isn't there and you don't know how big it's going to be or how terrifying?
As an Australian, and I'm sure Bren can attest to this, we so often, when we're not in the US, we have to self-tape. And sometimes we have to self-tape and the reader that we're using isn't very good. I've used my mum many times, and to her credit, she hasn't got a theatrical degree. So sometimes I prefer to look at a brick wall because my mum sometimes will distract me. Tanya, actually, you might even attest to this because you have to read with your mum sometimes for auditions. But a lot of the times, as actors, we just have to pretend it's there. Whatever we're seeing is there. And that was sort of a very good preparation for this movie because we didn't really get to see a lot of sharks. There was a couple of scenes where we had some sort of shark sort of heads that were like really actually quite realistic. I sent them to my nieces and nephews and they will never hear the real story about how it wasn't real. I would love to say that they were real sharks. But what I will say is this, the CGI on these sharks, John, were awesome. There's some scenes where you're like, that's amazing. Yeah. They did such an incredible job of bringing these CGI. I was really, really, I would say when you do a film like this, you kind of just go, okay, well, who knows how the CGI is going to turn out? And we've all seen some bad CGI in our lifetime. But I was really impressed with what the South African team was able to do with these sharks in the water and their natural movement. And, especially at the beginning of the movie with when Tanya has that interaction with, what was the shark's name again?
Sally.
Sally. Oh, Sally. But I thought it looked so good. That was all just sort of, pretend and believe it's there. It's all in the eyes, Anthony. It's all in the eyes. Dirk will tell you that.
Over and over and again, I will tell you that.
In those scenes, we actually didn't have a shark head. Actually, in none of the shark scenes I did, I didn't have any dummy sharks there. So the only thing that made it possible was that John had such a strong vision of what the sharks were going to do and how we should respond with the sharks that he was able to communicate it very easily. So it looks like we're responding to real sharks when there are none. It looks like we're responding to real sharks when there are no dummy sharks, when it's literally nothing there but open water, underwater for us. And he just was able to communicate exactly what was going on in the scene, how it was going to look, the finished product was going to look. And we were able to run with it. So I think that's a testament to just how clearly you understood what you wanted to see on screen, John. Does that make sense?
Nice of you to say. I mean, I think that's part of it, but I think I think we had a great crew, and I think that you guys were just, were really on your game. It was important to all of the cast that when they were imagining what was happening, that it was authentic for them as characters. And so we spent a lot of time talking this through, especially knowing that the communication was going to be very difficult in the water. And so think our process was that we just had to be really specific about what emotions we were feeling, what actions were happening, where the sequence was going, because it was sort of like just letting your offspring off into the world. I had no direct communication really with them. It was just sort of like, we think we know what we're doing. They knew what they were doing. Goodbye, come in Frog Squad, and I was, comfortable, 50 feet away while they did their stuff. So it was really a great collaboration with everybody involved. We were, we did have some funny leftover prosthetics and some not so funny from some prior productions, which we kind of had around the office to try to get people to sort of be aware of the dimensions of these sharks, because they're, bull sharks that are quite big. And where we could, we had the actors come in and sort of see, oh, that's pretty big. Like on the boat, for example, we used a dummy that wasn't a CG shark for most of it, so that they could get a feeling for what it was really like.
I remember that was one of the questions I kept obsessively asking you, John, which is like, how big is it? Because it's so hard to fathom, like when you're this close to a bull shark or a great white, how huge the thing is. And I think one of the crazier moments too, when you're acting kind of with nothing, or with like a tennis ball on a stick, for example, are for like the action sequences underwater with true like physical interaction with the shark. That at that point in my mind, I was just like, I'm going to picture what I think the shark is probably not what it will look like, and probably not what it really looks like in real life. But I have to at least have a consistent idea of how far it is from me, how big the mouth is. If I punch the thing, where am I landing that punch? While you're underwater without a regulator and all this stuff, it becomes, it's challenging. You don't want to panic, and yet in your mind you're still like, okay, the shark's like this big, it's this far. If I punch it, it's going to go there. Like you're kind of doing all these micro adjustments in your head because you're acting with nothing. And it's really fun, It was very fun that particular day because the water was warm.
We're going to take one more clip because we want to show the sharks with their full-on aggression mode. So let's roll that clip.
Lucas! Did you hear that? What the hell is happening? There's too much force in those hits. They're going to bust a hole straight through the observation window. The lab. That window's not going to last much longer. Our sharks are right there. What are you waiting for? Sedate them. Are we going to let them take this ship down, Richard? No. Charge tips. That's not your decision to make. You have a kill shot, you take it. I know how to stop it.
Richard!
Come on.
Anthony, I got a question for you.
Yes.
If you had to choose between fighting off a bull shark or a 9th Dan black belt in Taekwondo, what would you pick?
I'd probably pick the shark because I could probably
so would
get
I,
a couple
bro.
punches in.
So would I.
You just gave me 2 extra Dans. Mate, it's number 7,
Whoops,
man.
That's all right.
There's age requirements.
Who's
One
counting?
day, man.
You'll get there. I know you will.
Thanks, man.
I want to thank everybody for joining us on this Deep Blue Sea 3 panel. The movie is coming out from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. It's the latest entry in its ongoing franchise, and it arrives on digital July 28th, on a Blu-ray combo pack and DVD August 25th, 2020. And thank you guys again. Deep Blue Sea 3.
Yeah,
Thank
if you don't buy the
from
movie,
audience.
unfollow
Thank
me
you
on
for joining us.
Instagram. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.